After Ayrton Senna's fatal crash, race officials discovered something unusual among the wreckage. When they realized what it was, they couldn't hold back their tears. Even among the legends of Formula One, Senna stood out not just because of his incredible talent, but also due to the controversies that surrounded him and his tragic end. The varying car technologies over the years make it difficult to rank drivers from different eras, but fans and drivers alike agree that Senna was one of, if not the greatest, Formula One driver of all time. However, they would also acknowledge that Senna was one of the most controversial figures in the sport. He captivated audiences both on and off the track, right up until his tragic demise. Senna's impact on Formula One was undeniable, but he paid the ultimate price for it. Born in 1960 into a wealthy and close-knit Brazilian family, Senna seemed destined for a life of comfort, that is, until he discovered his passion for racing. At 21, Senna was eager to test his limits behind the wheel. He decided to drop out of university and move to England to pursue a career as a driver. However, upon arrival, he encountered an unexpected challenge. People in England told him he had no chance of becoming a driver without a wife to support him. Realizing what he needed to do, Senna returned home and proposed to Lilian de Vasconcelos Souza. On paper, Senna and Vasconcelos seemed like the perfect match. They had known each other since childhood and both came from wealthy Brazilian families. Their new life together as Senna began to rise in the motorsport world seemed like something out of a movie. But as with many movies, not all endings are happy. Senna and Vasconcelos were both out of their element, but one of them struggled more. While they both faced culture shock and neither spoke English, Senna at least had Formula Ford to focus on. Lilian, on the other hand, had left behind Brazilian high society for what she imagined would be an exciting life with her race car driver husband. Unfortunately, she soon realized that the reality was far different. The truth was painful, but Lilian couldn't deny it. I was his second passion. His first passion was racing. There was nothing more important in the world for him. Not family, not wife, nothing. Despite knowing this, she still allowed Senna the opportunity to prove her wrong. When they returned to Brazil, it wasn't long before the allure of racing drew Senna back to England. However, this time Lilian had reached her limit. She told Senna that if he returned to racing in England, their marriage would be over. Senna, understanding that he couldn't be both a good driver and a good husband, faced a difficult decision. After a year of a less than happy marriage, Senna and Vasconcelos decided to go their separate ways. However, the pull of racing was something Senna could never resist, and he answered that call without hesitation. One of Senna's most famous quotes is, "If you no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing driver." Perhaps, though, he was referring to more than just the gaps on the track. A year after making it into Formula One, Senna started dating Adrian Yaman, but their relationship had a persistent issue. Adrian was only 15 while Senna was 25. Things took a more troubling turn when Senna, seemingly not having learned from his first marriage, quickly proposed to the teenager. After 3 years of countless chaperone dates, the relationship ended, with Senna calling off the engagement, a decision that was likely for the best. While Senna's romantic life was faltering, his rivalries on the track were heating up. Senna idolized Nelson Piquet, the Brazilian Formula One champion, and eagerly looked forward to meeting him, hoping to follow in his footsteps. But as the saying goes, never meet your heroes. Piquet dismissed Senna, which only fueled the younger driver's determination. "I'm going to beat him one day," Senna vowed. However, Piquet had his own plans, ones that were far from friendly. After breaking into Formula One, Senna finally had the opportunity to challenge his idol-turned-rival, Nelson Piquet. Recognizing Senna's undeniable talent and potential to become a champion, Piquet realized that his status as Brazil's Formula One hero was under threat. Rather than support the rookie, Piquet launched a multi-year smear campaign against Senna, welcoming him to the sport with anything but open arms. Piquet didn't hold back, and Senna had no idea what was coming. The media frenzy reached new heights when Piquet accused Senna of being a closeted gay man, claiming that one of Senna's ex-girlfriends, whom he conveniently couldn't name, was his source. Senna was tempted to sue, but quickly understood that doing so would only draw more attention to the baseless rumors. Besides, he didn't feel the need to prove himself. It certainly helped that one of Senna's actual ex-girlfriends famously responded, "If that man is gay, I would like to have a gay man in my bed every night." Yet once the drama began, it was relentless. Rivalries are common in sports, but few can compare to the intense conflict between Senna and Alain Prost. Their contrasting nicknames, Magic Senna and the Professor, were as fitting as they were symbolic of their fiery and icy relationship. Despite their rivalry, Prost's team, McLaren, decided to hire Senna in 1988, setting the stage for one of the most dramatic pairings in motorsport history. In Formula One, beating your teammate is always a priority, but for Senna, it became an obsession. Prost soon realized that Senna wasn't just aiming to win. He was determined to utterly destroy him. At the time, Prost was already a two-time world champion and had been with McLaren for 4 years. In contrast, Senna had no titles and was new to what was essentially Prost's team. If Senna had been like most drivers, Prost might have been able to shrug off their rivalry. But this was Senna, and he was different. Senna could resist almost any temptation except the need to win. He once admitted, "Winning is like a drug. I'm totally dependent on winning at this moment." This obsession controlled him, driving him to cross boundaries and hurt those around him. His relentless pursuit of victory became almost addictive, leading many to compare him to an addict willing to do whatever it took to get his next fix. In his personal life, Senna dated many women, but few had as much significance as Xuxa. One day, the stunning Brazilian TV star was casually flipping through a magazine when she came across a photo of the handsome Senna. She thought, "Wow, look at his face. He likes animals just like me and is also famous. He was the total package." Despite being wealthier and more famous in Brazil than Senna at the time, Xuxa wasn't particularly hopeful about meeting him. As she put it, "These things don't happen in my life." However, she was in for a surprise. Just a week later, Senna called her out of the blue. He began with, "Hi, most beautiful woman of Brazil," and ended with an invitation to send his plane for her as soon as she was available. Xuxa accepted the offer, and the connection between them was immediate. After just one night of conversation, both Senna and Xuxa felt a special connection. However, the timing was far from ideal. With Senna on the brink of stardom and his first championship after joining McLaren, he wasn't about to slow down for anyone. The relationship he could offer Xuxa wasn't enough under these circumstances, and while their romance couldn't fully blossom, it planted the seed for something more. In every story there are heroes and villains, and Senna managed to be both. Off the track, he was known for cutting ties with drivers, teams, and even romantic partners once they were no longer beneficial to him. On the track, he was notorious for driving with an aggressive and often dangerous style, treating gentlemen's agreements among drivers as mere suggestions. This approach divided opinions, but Senna's mindset, paired with his exceptional talent, was undeniably championship material. All he needed was the right car, and at McLaren he found it. With the fastest car on the grid and the fastest teammate in Alain Prost, McLaren had the perfect combination to dominate the team championship. However, the battle for the Drivers' Championship turned into a nightmare, as only one McLaren driver could come out on top. Both Senna and Prost were willing to do whatever it took to win, but Senna's desire burned hotter. In his first year with McLaren and his first season driving a title-contending car, Senna emerged victorious. The 28-year-old Brazilian had successfully dethroned the 32-year-old French veteran, but Prost wasn't about to give up without a fight. Little did Senna know, the year ahead would be the most challenging of his life. After his victory, Senna returned to Brazil to celebrate, with Xuxa at the forefront of his mind. He was ready to offer her the relationship she had been waiting for and deserved. In a bold move, Senna, who had always lived with his parents when in Brazil, purchased a house specifically for himself and Xuxa. It was a significant investment, but Senna believed that everything would change after winning his first title. He was right, but not in the way he had hoped. As the new season began, Senna and Prost found themselves once again as teammates, driving the same car and vying for the same championship. However, their rivalry intensified to a new level of bitterness. Accusations of cheating, sabotage, and favoritism flew between the two, culminating in a dramatic showdown at the penultimate race of the season. While Senna had succeeded in love, his title defense was another story. The 1989 season started well for Senna, with him leading the championship, but a series of car failures soon shifted the momentum in Prost's favor. Senna knew that to stay in the championship fight, he had to win the Japanese Grand Prix. He couldn't afford another retirement, though Prost could. The tension between them reached its peak when the two teammates collided, forcing Prost, who was on the verge of securing the championship, to retire from the race. Senna wasn't going to give up that easily. He urgently had the marshals push him back into the race, and after an incredible comeback, he crossed the finish line first. This unexpected victory seemed to put him right back in the title fight, but not for long. That little push start, it was against the rules, and the officials disqualified Senna for it. You can imagine how he reacted. Senna launched into a media tirade, accusing the officials of conspiring to hand the championship to Prost. Despite his protests, the decision stood, and Senna lost the championship. At least he had won over Xuxa, right? Yet even this victory was bittersweet. Senna and Xuxa eventually had to face two hard truths. First, they were deeply in love, and everyone believed they were destined to be together, to marry and live happily ever after. But second, their demanding careers made a lasting relationship impossible. So, their romance had to come to an end. Despite securing the Drivers' Championship, Prost had had enough of the turmoil that Senna had brought to McLaren. In a surprising move, Prost left for Ferrari the following season. But Senna wasn't ready to let go of their rivalry. Like a recurring nightmare, everything came to a head once again at the Japanese Grand Prix. For Senna, revenge was best served on the track. Prost needed a good finish that day to keep Senna from winning his second championship. But Senna had other plans. He deliberately crashed into Prost on the first lap, leaving no doubt that it wasn't an accident, mistake, or mechanical failure. It was pure revenge. It was revenge pure and simple. Classic Senna. He went on to win the 1990 and 1991 championships, and for a while, it seemed like Senna was unbeatable. But in Formula One, fortunes can change quickly. By 1993, Senna had met his third and final great love. Adrienne Galisteu, a 19-year-old Brazilian model, had taken a job as a hostess at the Brazilian Grand Prix, even though she hesitated because it wasn't traditional modeling work. She needed the money, but she ended up finding much more than that. It never crossed my mind that during that weekend, I would find the love of my life. She later reflected. Senna wasn't just an eligible bachelor, he was the eligible bachelor. When the models at the Grand Prix heard that the hometown hero had taken an interest in them, they hurried to the bathroom to touch up their hair and makeup. Galisteu was captivated the moment Senna made eye contact and smiled at her, but she played it cool. When his assistant asked for her number, Galisteu agreed and later found herself at a club where Senna was celebrating his win, surrounded by other women. He approached her, but Galisteu wasn't one for competition. She took a gamble and walked away, a move that paid off. What followed was a game of cat and mouse until Galisteu decided she was done with the games. Realizing that Senna was still seeing other women, she decided to lay all her cards on the table. Fortunately, Senna felt the same way, and the two dropped the pretense to start a genuine relationship. At first, their romance felt like a dream to Galisteu, but the reality of Senna's fame soon proved overwhelming. In an attempt to build a solid foundation, the couple openly discussed their past relationships, hoping to leave them behind. However, one of Senna's former flings refused to stay in the past. Senna revealed that an ex had gone to the press, claiming she had given birth to his illegitimate daughter. Senna was adamant that while they had spent a night together, there was no way the child was his. Unfortunately, by the time the truth came out, the damage had already been done. The rumors of a secret child added unnecessary tension to Senna and Galisteu relationship, which already had its own share of drama. Galisteu was aware of Senna's fiery temper on the track, but when he turned that anger toward her, it was too much. She crumbled, often bursting into tears and apologizing to him. However, if Senna's temper was hard to handle, his family's treatment of her was even worse. They didn't just dislike Galisteu, they outright belittled her. To them, she was no better than a commoner, unworthy of their golden boy, and they made sure she knew it. This hostility likely had more to do with the fact that Senna was spending his time with her instead of them. Senna's off-track relationships were just as strained as those on it. He clashed repeatedly with rising star Michael Schumacher, who was quickly making a name for himself in the world of Formula One. The dynamic between them mirrored Senna's earlier rivalries, but this time Senna was the established champion, and Schumacher was the newcomer eager to prove himself.
At the German Grand Prix, Senna finally snapped. During pre-race testing, he accused Schumacher of blocking him on the track and, in a moment of rage, grabbed him by the throat. Schumacher later downplayed the incident, joking that it was just a neck massage, but Senna's other rivals were far less forgiving. Although Senna still had the talent to win championships, his car was no longer up to the task. By 1992, Senna was desperate to join Williams, a team that offered the best chance at another title. He was so eager that he even offered to drive for free. However, his past came back to haunt him. Williams was forced to turn him down due to a clause in one of their drivers' contracts that prohibited the team from signing Senna. That driver was none other than Alain Prost. When Senna learned of this, he publicly called Prost a coward. But there was little else he could do at the time. When Prost retired in 1994, Senna finally got his chance to join Williams and drive what he believed was the best car on the circuit. However, once he got behind the wheel, he realized the car was not only underwhelming but also dangerously unsafe. A sense of dread began to creep in, and Senna knew he should have heeded that feeling. Formula One has always been perilous, even for a driver of Senna's caliber. But in 1994, the sport seemed to be teetering on the edge. Senna himself ominously predicted, "It's going to be a season with lots of accidents, and I'll risk saying that we'll be lucky if something really serious doesn't happen." He understood that his skill could only carry him so far, and that his luck was running out. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix would go down in history for all the wrong reasons. The tragedies began in the first qualifying session when Rubens Barrichello, Senna's protege and fellow Brazilian, suffered a horrific crash on the notoriously dangerous track. After being knocked unconscious, Barrichello woke up to find himself with a broken nose and arm, and his race weekend abruptly ended. At the time, Barrichello was disappointed, but in hindsight, he was lucky. Others weren't. The following day, during the final qualifying session, tragedy struck. A piece of Roland Ratzenberger's car broke off and lodged under the chassis, causing the car to lose control entirely. Without steering, Ratzenberger's vehicle slammed into an unprotected concrete wall. He didn't survive the crash. When Senna heard the news, he was devastated, breaking down in the arms of his close friend, Formula One Dr. Sid Watkins. Concerned about Senna's emotional state, Watkins urged him to retire from racing, but the three-time champion, unable to walk away from the sport, refused and unknowingly sealed his fate. Before leaving for the race, Senna had made a promise to Galisteu. "One day I will marry you, and one day I will work for Ferrari. I will end my career there and end my life with you." The night before the race, Senna and Galisteu spoke on the phone, making plans to reunite at the airport as soon as he returned home. On race day, Senna, along with the other drivers and even Prost, met before the start. For once, they were united in their agreement. Formula One needed to become safer. Unfortunately, Their realization came too late. When the race began, Senna's lead over Schumacher was suddenly interrupted when two cars collided, sending debris into the grandstands and injuring an officer and several fans. Watching from home, Juan Manuel Fangio, a retired driver and one of Senna's idols, saw the horrifying moment when Senna's car slammed into the wall at high speed. Though the cameras caught some movement from the cockpit, suggesting signs of life, Fangio knew better and turned off his television. He had seen enough crashes to know what was likely to follow. Meanwhile, when Galisteo saw the crash, she initially thought, "Oh, that's good. He'll be home sooner after all." After all, Senna had survived so many crashes before. As more time passed without any updates on Senna, Galisteo's anxiety grew. When it finally hit her that this crash was different, she began to scream. At the scene, Dr. Sid Watkins was one of the first to reach Senna. A single glance inside the wreckage confirmed his worst fears. His friend was gone. Although they rushed Senna to the hospital and did everything possible, Watkins knew the truth before anyone else. Later, the medical team made a heartbreaking discovery in Senna's car, a carefully folded Austrian flag. Though Senna wasn't Austrian, he had planned to wave the flag in honor of Ratzenberger, the Austrian driver who had died the day before. Tragically, Senna never got the chance to raise it. Senna had intended to mourn and honor Ratzenberger, but instead he joined him. The aftermath of that race was marked by one of the most somber podium ceremonies in Formula One history. The motorsport community spent years grappling with how so much could have gone wrong in a single weekend. While Formula One mourned the loss of a champion, Brazil grieved the loss of a national hero. More than 3 million people gathered in São Paulo for Senna's funeral procession, making it one of the largest in history. Senna's impact was felt far and wide, with everyone from his fiercest rivals to Brazil's World Cup-winning soccer team dedicating their victories to his memory. Even today, Senna's legacy endures, though in ways both admirable and complex. Formula One is much safer now, with many of its life-saving regulations born out of the tragedy that claimed Senna's life. It's a bittersweet reality. While these changes have saved countless lives, they came too late to save Senna himself. In a way, Senna had to sacrifice his life to save others, and that sacrifice is just one part of his incredible legacy. A major element of Senna's mystique lies in his untimely death. He had so much more to give, both on the track and off, leaving people to wonder what more he could have achieved. Countless drivers, including legends like Lewis Hamilton, cite Senna as a source of inspiration. To be compared to Senna is one of the greatest honors a driver can receive. Senna brought hope, glory, and inspiration to his nation, and his impact extended beyond racing. He secretly donated a significant portion of his wealth to causes in Brazil and dreamed of founding a charity. While many drivers have won championships since, Senna's legacy, both on and off the track, remains unmatched. That concludes our video on Ayrton Senna. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments.